and it's recording. And okay, so everyone, welcome to Illuminations. My guest today is Joe Reboy, and Joe and I are going to talk about his show and he does television streaming, by the way, so I thought that would be interesting for everyone because a lot of us want to do that, don't know how. Don't even know that Joe's got a program that he's streaming on television. So, Joe, what got you into television streaming? What made you want to do your own show? I understand you and your wife have your own shows, and I'm just curious to know, for all our Western New York filmmaking family, you might want to tell them your story. They may not even know that you're doing this.
Well, about 10 and a half years ago, my wife was, she would watch these horror-hosted movies on the internet, streaming, on a channel that ran them 24/7, and she was just very active with chatting on there and so forth, and she needed something in her life that she was missing, and they had a convention down in, I want to say Cincinnati, and she was like pining. She wanted to go to this convention. She didn't think she could do it. And I said, no, you have to do it. And no, it wasn't Cincinnati. I'm sorry. It was in Indianapolis, I believe. Anyhow, I said, you have to do it. So I helped her get with the plane tickets and all that stuff. And I did not go out there with her. And this is very intentional because, we're, at this point, we're early 50s kind of thing, our age range. And she needed to not be Mrs. Reboy or the mother of our son. She needed to be herself. So I sent her out by herself for a full weekend with these people. She came back so freaking happy, so thrilled. She had so much fun. And it's because nobody was distracting her. She wasn't defined as my wife or anything like that. And so that was great. So she said, a week later, she says, I want to be a horror host. Okay, well, what do you need? So we jumped right into that, and she started doing that, and she does it to this day. About 2.5 years into doing that, she felt she had enough episodes that she was going to try to get the show picked up by a local TV station. Well, a lot of the larger stations weren't going to touch us, and another station that would have been an interesting choice just didn't feel like a right fit for us. And we were told by another horror host guy that there's a station called WBXZ-TV, which is channel 56.4, that would probably be interested because they do run some other horror hosts. So she sent a letter or an email off to this guy. 2 months later, he responds and says, yes, he's interested. So we had to find out what the station was like. We didn't have an antenna, so we said, okay, well, we're going to have to get an antenna because it's not on local cable. And we installed a basic antenna. That didn't work. Had to go 2 or 3 times out till eventually we got an antenna. And the first Saturday morning that we were available, right after we got the channel set up, we decided to see what their Saturday lineup is, because that's how you're going to determine if it's a good station or not. And we're watching some really creepy, creaky, terribly antiquated cartoons for a little while. And then a couple of cool things showed up. And then at noon, Flash Gordon. I'm not a big Flash Gordon guy. That's a little too far back for me in terms of, the way the show was done and all, just really didn't do anything for me. Well, they followed that up with something I'd never heard of before. And I that's what I love about this level of television. You find things you didn't even know existed. And that's still happening to this day, to be honest. But in this case, it was a show called Captain Zero. And I don't know if you're familiar with Captain Zero or not. Not a lot of people are, but if you are, you can't help but love it. It was this low, ultra low budget thing. put together by this guy out in the Midwest back in the 50s about a guy from the far future and his, of course, teen sidekick who monitored events in the history on a big TV screen. And if they didn't go the way they were supposed to, he'd go back and he'd adjust it so that things would happen correctly. Now, on the face of that, that's a highly preposterous concept, because how do you know it's supposed to go like one way or another? I mean, just because the history says that didn't happen doesn't mean that history wrote down everything, right?
Right.
So I'm watching this, and I'm immediately hooked by the preposterousness of it, and the fact that this guy is really, really into telling, like being serious about what he's doing. But the show's goofy as hell. The teen sidekick, Jet, is he's your average 50s teenage character who, and not the ones that look like they're 47, the ones that are actually look like teenagers, who was just like, golly gee, I think we should do that, or boy, I'm going to do the wrong thing here just because I'm a teenager, just that sort of thing. But the thing that really struck out for me, that really made me go, this sparked something big in me, is Captain Zero, who, he's got this set that for a low budget, made for one TV station thing that got picked up for syndication. He had this set that was actually really kind of dynamic. And he had this costume that was blacks and grays, but he had a helmet with a big Z on it. His last name's Zero, and Z-RO. And he had cufflinks on his big, huge, gloves that had a big Z on it. And then on his chest is this round logo with a big, huge Z on it. I'm like, did this guy's mom not trust him to dress himself? But this is great. This is exactly the sort of thing that inspires me. So I took that look and I developed a character, and I said, I need somebody that kind of reminds me of this guy because he's just perfect for it. Well, the guy that had told us about the TV station, his name's Eric Nilsson. He has an involvement with a horror host streaming community. In fact, the one that was at the convention where my wife got the inspiration to do her show. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at this kid that was on semi-regular on Mansion of Mystery, my wife's show. And I'm like, I have a Captain Zero and I have a Jet. But I'm not going to do Captain Zero. I don't like to walk in someone else's sandbox or play in someone else's sandbox, because they did that. Nobody needs me.
Copywriting too, right? You don't want to.
Actually, no, that wouldn't have been an issue. The show was in the public domain.
Okay.
But I didn't want to do that because I don't want to ever be compared to the original, because when you're comparing yourself to the original, the best you can hope for is maybe there's a less than 1% chance that you'll exceed it, but more than likely you'll compare unfavorably. So Be original, put out your own show. So I took that look and I started, doing amalgams from different elements and putting my own spin on it. And I created, and after a lot of research to find out which captain names weren't taken already, I created a guy named Captain Isotope and his barely teen sidekick, Cadet Timmy, and who was inspired initially by, initially the idea of him was inspired by an old comedy bit with Dr. Science, I think it was, who would teach this young kid, Timmy, science things, but it was all kind of comics, very comedic stuff. And Timmy would create all sorts of havoc. Well, I wanted Timmy to be very serious about what he did. I did not want him, but I didn't want him to be the Uber kid who solves all the problems. I just wanted him to be part of the team, very serious about what he did, and just be a person.
Yeah.
And I wanted a lot of the comedy to come out of Captain Isotope. And as it turned out, that was actually the wrong thing to do. And if you watch the first episode, most of the original version of the show kind of is in the first episode. And then in the second episode, completely different take and starts changing the characters to what they are now. But this, this idea sort of sprung into my head about a guy who roams around the space in a small spaceship with a kid, and it's like an adult fantasy to be like, hey, I'm going to go out and save the universe. And I said, I need a princess. And I knew a girl who I wanted to work with for a long time, Carol Simchak. And I invited her out for pizza, and I talked to her, and I remember very clearly the thing that hooked her was I gave her one line of dialogue. I said, "You're going to at some point during this first episode say, I don't want to hear you say another word, not yes, not no, or I will beat you." Yeah, something like that. I don't actually, for some reason, I'm blanking on the actual line of dialogue. But whatever it was, I gave her. She loved it. And so I said, okay, I have to write that into the script, which means I have to write a script, which was the first lesson you learn when you're making a TV show is, oh my God, you have to do a lot of writing.
Yeah. Yes.
So second, I had to come up with background. Actors. Once I had actors, I pretty much knew I was going to do this. Then I had to come up with backgrounds, which meant I had to decide, am I going to do a green screen or am I going to build sets? Well, where am I going to build sets? I don't have the money to build all these sets. Green screen. So you can do a lot with green screen, a lot. And the best part about green screen is once you get it, it's really, a lot of people do green screen with the intention of, I'm going to wow you with all the technical cool things I can do. That's the wrong approach. Green screen, if you're going to use it on my level, where you have like virtually no money, you just make backgrounds with it, try to integrate them as seamlessly so that people are watching the people and not the backgrounds or the effects. And you can have your effects sequences. But yeah, so I had to develop all of these things. Then I had to go to Steve Ritchie, the guy who was running WBXZ TV, and sell him on the idea. And he agreed to it. He said, "Go ahead, make your pilot." And we were, I think, 2 or 3 episodes in. I remember him visiting us on the set, and we're talking about it. And I said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about doing 6 episodes." And he goes, 26 would be better.
That's awesome.
Sure, I can pull 26 episodes out of my butt. So,
well, it's a lot of learning, but it's great that he wants 26 episodes. Not well.
But I didn't have a 26 episodes. I didn't have a 26 episodes story arc in my head, so I had to kind of redefine everything. And that's
hard.
Well, if it's not hard, you're doing it wrong. This is something that that's why not a lot of people make television shows. It's a lot of work. It's grueling at times, but it always pays back dividends in terms of all the energy you get from the people you work with. It informs the direction of the show. I remember
it's inspiring. Really, it's very inspiring when people get back. But I mean, you want to inspire them, and I would say part of the hard part, the hard deal, if you will, in writing the story is to make it sequential and always focused on what the main subject of the story is, with your little side stories in between, but always focused in that one. You're on one course, in other words, so people can follow it. If they can't follow it, they lose interest. Bye bye. There goes your audience.
Well, there are a couple of keys to that. First off, watch a lot of television. And I don't mean to say copy everything you do that's done on television, but understand the pacing, understand why things happen, understand how things interact, and understand in storytelling with television, you don't have to advance. If it's a sequential story, you don't have to advance with huge leaps every time. You can just take a tiny segment of something and move the story forward, as long as somebody in there is different at the end of the episode than they were at the beginning. And you can find ways to plant seeds for later down the road. Or as I had to do probably about 3 or 4 times, go back in and insert seeds several episodes before that I hadn't had on the original takes, because the original show, if I broadcast every show as they were originally edited, probably about 6 or 7 episodes would be somewhat significantly different, excluding bloopers that accidentally got through, which a few did, by the way, even including on national television. I remember watching on retro TV one night, and one of the characters flubs a line, and there's like 3 minutes of them laughing about how they got the line wrong, and then they go, and like, I didn't take that out, on national television, but that's okay. I fixed it. Life happens.
It's authentic.
Sometimes, well, it's foolish, but that's the problem with being a one-man operation on the behind the scenes. So.
Well, but I do that too. I made some episodes with Bob Cornuke, and the second one we were tired, and then there are things that you want to say, but may not necessarily be able to say, and for various reasons, and we won't get into that, but then you look kind of stupid. You start saying something, and then you say later on, like a learning experience, don't do that. You have to think and focus, and it's hard, just chatting, talking about stuff. But for planning a program, yeah, you are the one guy, you're very busy, plus it's your program. Sometimes, if you've ever been a composer, you're writing some orchestration, you may conduct an orchestra differently, and you think they're playing the way you want to hear it. So it's not necessarily what's actually being performed, but you miss it, and it's very obvious for someone who would be in that in that world, if you will, to recognize if you've done it, been in it and stuff. But yeah, for one guy, it's hard. And when it's your own stuff, yeah, it's.
And I want to be clear, when I say one-man operation, that's a misnomer, really. I'm the only one that knows the whole picture. I'm the only one that knows where I'm headed with it all. But I didn't make the costumes. The costumes were made by a really cool lady, Janice Mergenhagen, who's been a friend of mine since like '83, and her husband, Larry Tatuski, who is the associate producer on the show, who was invaluable for coming up with oddball things that I needed when I needed them, or helping with the locations, or even a little bit of casting. So there's a guy who literally just passed away last week in England, who made the original finished version, 3D version of the hero spaceship, the USS Isotope, which unfortunately he was never able to pull off, providing me CGI footage beyond like about 30 seconds worth. So I wasn't able to use it, but he solidified the look of the ship. And then another guy out in East Aurora who physically built the model of the ship, and then built he built this big, large model that's like about that long. And then second season we introduced. I wanted to be able to make model kits, so he made this resin cast model kit, and it was so good. I started using that for filming because I could get better detail.
Yeah.
So I think like the way the Enterprise in Next Generation evolves, you can see how in the early episodes there's nowhere near as much surface detail, and suddenly the ship has all of this Nurnies all over the hull and all that weren't there before. So yeah. And I need to say this. There's a guy named he doesn't like to use his real name, but his professional musical name is Murdered by Robots, who did the theme song and a couple of other pieces of music for me. And those things are so crucial, so instrumental to the success of the show. So it's a misnomer, like I say, for me to say the only guy behind the scenes. I'm not. But on the day-to-day operation of the show, I'm the one who takes. Yeah, I shoot the show. I direct the show. I take everything back to my desk in my den, and I put it on the computer, and I add the elements that I need and put it all together. But the elements had to be in place to be there, and those are the people that I just really needed to say, so that I don't come across as, well, it was all me. Nobody could have done it.
No, I know what you mean.
But even the creativity of the show, which I'm being mildly egotistical saying that, but I think it's accurate. Even the creativity of the show stems from the energy I would get off of the cast. We're filming an episode that sadly never actually came to pass because we couldn't come up with a robot that we needed at the time. And we tried, but we're just not good at prop making at times. But we had an episode called "The Day Timmy Went Berserk" that we were filming, and there's a woman who was playing an admiral, I think it was, or no, a general. Sorry, General Crank. You'd think I would remember this stuff a lot better. General Crank, and Timmy, who was the young cadet. And I'm looking at these two while we're waiting to film something, and I'm looking at these two, and then suddenly, and this is very early on in the production, I go, I don't know how, but by the end of this season, General Crank is going to shoot Timmy.
Now, what made you come up with that idea? What did you see?
I can't even tell you. It's just all of a sudden in my head. I needed to move in a direction, and I needed to have that. And that suddenly, from that point forward, General Crank ceases to be wholly nice, and you'll start seeing. And I think about episode 7 or 8, you'll start seeing hints that she's not wholly on the same team. And Timmy stays Timmy more or less. He does advance in ways through the series, but he's still, largely speaking, he's the natural progression of this kid without any major things going on. But I needed to have something shocking at the end of the first season, and I just had this image in my head of her shooting him, which that is a callback to some of the most awesome 60s Japanese kids shows. You ever see Johnny Sacco and his flying robot?
No. I missed out on a lot of good ones, I'm sure.
There's an episode. It's a great show. There's an episode. We just started showing it, by the way. It's on Saturdays at, I want to say 5 or 5:30 now on Throwback, but we'll get to that later. He's this kid who has a huge robot that fights for him, and it's in the Ultraman vein of things. And there's an episode where he befriends this kid who's actually a bad guy kid. And as the kid has changed sides at the end of the episode, and they're walking away from the camera, this villain pops open a manhole and shoots that kid in the back and kills him. I'm like, who does that? That's a kid's show. They just wholesale shot a kid in the back and killed him on a kid's show.
Yeah,
you gotta, so I'm like, that I have to pay tribute to that somehow. Well, we and I think we did it in a nice way where it doesn't really scar as badly. But it also kind of fits where the show is capable of going at times. So, and I was also a little, I wanted that level of, shake things up when you least expect they're going to get shaken up. So,
finding ways to affect the emotions of your audience and put them this way or that way, or try to put them in a direction maybe concerning the story.
Yeah, well, it's important. As I learned filming the first episode, if you don't like the characters yourself, if you don't respect these characters, you're not going to do a good job writing them. In the pilot episode, the very last line is Captain Isotope has been taken prisoner by being the Merciless, and he's tied to a chair and he's been beaten senseless. He's got bruises and stuff all over his face. Timmy shows up to rescue him. And as Timmy goes off to save the princess, and is oblivious to how badly beaten up Captain Isotope is, the last line as written was, "I want my mommy." Okay. Well, when I picked up Eric that morning to go film that scene, we're chatting, and I look at him at one point, and I say, as we're driving in, I say, "What do you think if we cut that last line?" He goes, "Thank you. Thank you so much." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it undercuts the character." And so we took that line out, and I'm much happier with the ending. But the first episode is largely very different from the rest of the run of the series. But it would have been a bad thing to throw that in there. So,
well, it's a
am
lot
I meandering too much?
No, I think people are interested. You go, especially if you are trying to do yourself on a show or a video cast, or you're thinking about how do I get into television streaming? A lot of folks would say, well, it's not that great. I need a good camera, which, you want to have a good camera. If the shot is lousy, it's very often nowadays a turnoff because everybody's used to cable television, right? Cable news and all the movies that you can get online now. So, but anyway, I think people are interested to know. And if you're a Western New Yorker, you're doing all this right here, it's interesting to people to know. So, yeah, please continue.
Well, this wasn't my first foray into any kind of filmmaking, but it was my first attempt at actually creating something that I knew was going to go somewhere. And this is pretty much largely probably the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people when they want to make something is, well, I've made it. What do I do with it? And I had a few years prior to this started going out and. Do you remember that they shot part of, they shot Return to Nukem High, the Troma movie, in Western New York? I don't know if you were aware of that.
I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. Through Greg, I'm aware of it.
Right. And I was, I had just turned 50 at that point, or I was turning 50 while they were doing it. And my son wanted to be an actor, so he was on the set. So I decided, I walked up to Lloyd one day, Lloyd Kaufman, and just, because you can. And I said, so are we going to have gratuitous nudity and violence in this thing? And he goes, yes, we will. I said, okay, good. I don't want to be part of one of your shows if it doesn't have that. And but that's what Troma is known for anyhow. And he invited me to be like one of the teachers or something. Well, I didn't have the time to be on set very often, but I did put in a day or two, and that was great. But more important than being a part of that movie was I suddenly realized there's like hundreds of people literally being a part of this, and these people all were talking about their own film projects, and I realized there's this community of filmmakers here. So I decided to use the downtime, of which there was plenty of, to kind of get to know people and make some connections. And some of that worked very well, and some of it was in a roundabout kind of way worked. But my favorite was there were these two guys who I'd noticed had been fairly omnipresent around the set, but they weren't talking to people a lot. And I thought, okay, well, I haven't talked to them yet, so I walk over and I introduced myself and said, yeah, I'm trying to get into making some short films and things like that. And they're just sort of like standing there. I'm like, oh, okay, so they're assholes. And I walked away. Well, one of the guys was Michael O'Hare, who I wasn't going to do a Captain Isotope without it because I had gotten to know him so much better since then through working with Asa Genovese on his Outlaw films. Yes. And I needed a mad scientist on the show, a good guy, mad scientist. And it was going to be Michael. It took me time after the show started to come up with a version of a mad scientist that hadn't been done already. Because I didn't want to ape, say, for instance, Krieger from Archer or whatever. I wanted an original creation. And so, but Michael was definitely necessary to the show. And then one day he was, he was suffering from Crohn's disease, and which, if you're aware of it, it's a pretty grisly thing. And there was a period where he wasn't able to film for a little while, so he said, "Well, I'm going to have to take a break from the show for a bit. Why don't you use Paul McGinnis?" He was the other guy who was standing there going, like, "I don't know." He goes, No. Paul's a nice guy. So I could contact him. I said, "Paul, do you want to do this show? Play this character on the show?" It's not the same character, just bringing in another character. And he says, "Yeah, okay." And he comes out and he films. And I wrote the next script and I put his character in. Wrote the next script and I put this character. I was so happy with him that in my head he already was a regular. And it was like a year into it, and I go, "You're one of the core group." He goes, "I am?" He says, "Yeah." "You didn't know that? Why do you think I put you in every episode since you showed up?" He says, I don't know. You just write, I show up." I said, "No, you are one of the regulars. You're important to the future of the show." They said, "Oh, okay. Well, where can I watch it? I've never seen it." That's Paul, but he's a very talented guy. Anyhow,
yeah, he is. He
that's
wrote
a
Killer Rat, which is
that's
where
a
I met him.
split off though from your original question, which is getting into this and getting into streaming. I made all these connections and I started doing this. I started making some short films, and I tried doing a web series thing, a vampire thing, and there was this huge personality conflict that just kind of tore everything apart. And it wasn't me; it was within the cast. And that happens. You can't protect against everything. But there was no way to bring it back together, because these people had to work together and they just weren't going to work together again. So, okay, fine. That thing dies. Vampires, the other thing got staked in the heart. And another project I tried doing that ended up, different reasons, stopped. Okay. So my wife, when she brought up doing the horror host thing, and she was getting her show prepared, said, "What you need, Joe, is a set. You need a place to shoot at, because you're using actual location somewhere. You don't have the kind of control you need for who shows up, who doesn't show up, all of that. And if people come to you to a specific set, they'll automatically go, you're the guy in charge." So it gave me that control to be able to eliminate somebody if I didn't like what they were doing and still keep things going. And largely speaking, that makes a huge amount of difference. You have to have a central place for filming. So I wasn't going to do a TV show if I didn't have a place for it to go, because there's nothing worse than just making something and nobody ever gets to see it. And it's so much work, so much effort, and that's what happened with my short films. Although I will say, one of the short films I made during that period, called Interrogation, with Ari Nicole and the late Bill Brown, is just every day it's getting seen by a couple hundred people on YouTube, and it's it's my highest viewed thing on YouTube. So it's over 500,000 views now, and it's just this little 10-minute thing. There was going to be a pilot, but I got involved with Ace and wasn't able to continue with that. So, which is fine. Anyhow, I realized I needed to have a venue, and the television thing speaks to me more than movies. A lot of people say, "I want to make movies." But you go into the theater, you see your name up on the big screen. It's, everyone's big and huge, but people have to come in. They have to sit down. They have to pay the money to see the movie, and then they have to leave. And then you hope somewhere along the line that you get picked up for on demand on something like Amazon or whatever. And even that, no matter what you make, you're competing against thousands and thousands and thousands of options. And that's too hard. That's too much work for me. I'm sorry. That's I don't have the budget for that kind of thing. I don't have the camera quality for that kind of thing. So I just I like television. Television is far more structured. As I said, the pacing of it for a half-hour show it helps you stay focused and control. There's a play written by Steve Martin called Picasso at the Lapine Gil, which I only got to see or even hear about it because my son was taking acting classes at Niagara University. But it was a great play because it very correctly points out that amazing pieces of artwork are not amazing without the frame that they're, like a painting is not amazing without the frame that it's in, because that frame defines that universe. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So television gives you a tightly controlled frame. It gives you parameters. Like for instance, if you're doing television, you immediately have to say, well, I have to be FCC compliant. Nobody can swear. Nobody can get naked. And yeah, you can't do it. I'm sorry, you can't. And you have to progress your stories in certain fashions, and you can't really say, okay, I have to be very conservative, so I'm going to push a political view. No, I'm not. You can't do that. I don't want anyone to ever watch that show and go, well, this was clearly made by a guy who, is a big fan of this side of the political spectrum versus this side of the political spectrum. The show needs to be completely neutral. If you're doing a short film or even a feature, you kind of have to take a point of some sort, even if it's not political. You have to take a perspective. With a TV show, you just put the story out there, and then you just kind of inform the direction of the characters with your viewpoints. But you also have to be inspired by them, and if their viewpoints are different from yours, that's fine, because there's so many different viewpoints out there. So you try to integrate all those things, and you get, if you're lucky, you get the best of everybody.
You're the creator. I mean, it's you can take that viewpoint if you're creating something about a character who is one way politically or the other way, and then you might bring another character in. So as you're in control, being a creator and telling the story, you're a storyteller, right? So
yes.
It gives you those options. And yeah, you want overall the story to be, let's say, a neutral aspect on. Let people decide for themselves what they see, and take it the way they take it, which might be different. People, you can't please everybody about everything you do, right? So, but yeah, as the creator, you have control of that, and if that's what you want, you can deliver. So,
well, we've been watching. I don't know how much you follow these things, but all the popular, say, sci-fi tentpole types of things from the last several years, except I think Battlestar Galactica hasn't been affected by this, but say Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars, these are the biggest IPs on the planet. Everybody knows them, and the Lord of the Rings too, and the last several years, they've been subverted and torn down and torn apart and changed by people who want their political viewpoint shown. Yeah. They want their political viewpoint to be more important than these IPs. That is absolutely horrifying to me. Is that, and I will say this: if I wanted to push, let's say, hey, I think Trump is the greatest thing on the planet, and I think he deserves to have a movie about himself, I can go ahead and make a movie about him. But if I said on Captain Isotope, well, back in the 2020s, President Trump, who was the greatest president the United States ever had or the world ever saw, well, then I'm screwing with people, and I'm dividing my audience and making them think I don't want to watch this because this guy is pushing a viewpoint.
Right.
I'm not Western Union. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to push a viewpoint. I just want you to be entertained. And at the end of the day, I want you to say, that guy did that with that kind of budget? That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you're saying is very obvious, very apparent, looking at Star Trek from the 1960s all the way to these new programs, Discovery in particular. Even the language, things are changing, and it's the society that we have. Maybe they think that they gotta sell, so they'll put something in there that they think is attractive to an audience, rather than putting something together and letting the audience decide whether they like it or not. They're going to tell you what you're going to like. It doesn't quite, or at least in aspects, in parts, how they put scenes together, even like a cookie cutter. You've got a story, you divide the story up or you segment it, it makes it hard to follow. It's not sequential, the audience can be confused, and now it's political. Another turnoff. In other words, people stop watching. Well, they get angry, especially if they are following that iconic show.
Well, there's so many things out in the world right now that if you want politics, you can just hop on YouTube and you can spend hours watching all this stuff that will just depress the hell out of you. And the most important thing that I learned in life is politics will do many things for you, but it will never make you happy.
Yeah.
That's the last thing it will do. And, that's a valuable lesson to learn. Just like the lesson I learned from Isotope on the Outlaw films is black and white. This was his phrase. You may have heard him say it. Black and white hides a multitude of video sins. That's one of the reasons Captain Isotope is in black and white is, apart from I'm trying to evoke a time period, but also is chroma key looks better in black and white than it does in color because it's less obvious.
Well, black and white, and for us, we're now considered part of the older generation in America. It allows us to use our imagination, whereas color doesn't. But the younger crowd, many of them lack imagination. They're copying everyone else's ideas for filmmaking, for instance. So they don't have it. But for you and me, yeah, it's more beautiful in many ways. It invokes your imagination in a different way, and it has a lot of pluses. People, forget.
Well, in the first season of the show, I know the black and white was more perfunctory and everything was fairly flatly lit, and we were literally shooting in a very small room with no air conditioning and no windows, no everything. Like it was our studio was probably about a 17 or 18 foot long room that's about maybe 8 feet wide, 10 feet wide, something like that, and we just put green fabric all over the wall and lit it as best we could. It was very limiting in that respect, so we were very flat and limiting. When we eventually moved out of there and into what I consider to be a much more real studio, you suddenly start seeing more lighting effects where the shadows and things were allowed in, because I could control that a lot more, and the image gets richer because especially in black and white, shadows are really key to giving some character to the people. You don't want a flatly lit show if you can avoid it. And oddly enough, Eric, who plays Captain Isotope, was against my adding that almost noir-like look to the show. But I'm like, no, it just plain looks better when you do this. And, going dark, and once or twice I actually go too dark, in fact. In fact, if you turn on the show tomorrow night on Throwback, which is on Roku now, and I'll get to that in a moment. The episode that's there, I actually went too dark, visually too dark, not storytelling, visually too dark, where once or twice the lead character's faces are almost obscured by how dark it is. You live, you learn.
But I look at it this way. You go and you explore it. A lot of movies that they used to make, they thought, well, let's give it the natural look. If it's dark, it's dark. It's what you might expect to see if you were there yourself. And so they're giving you this image. It's almost a completely blank screen. But I like to say, you be your own critic and look and do what you like and eliminate the things that you discover you don't like. You know, sometimes you discover afterwards. You're thinking one way. You know how it goes. You're just thinking one way. You go through it, and then later on in editing or whatnot, if you're just criticizing your own stuff, you say, wow, I should not have done that, or I'm not going to do that again. It doesn't appeal the way I thought it would. So it's a, you know, we all go through all of that stuff. And it's a growing thing, you know.
Now, I keep saying I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. So I'm going to get to it now because you do want to find out about the getting into the streaming and so forth. What happened there was right around the time that, you know, because the show has always been made for WBXZ, the local TV station, and then wherever it got after that was just gravy. So when the station owner he urged me to offer the show to Retro TV, which is a national syndicated, you know, station around the country. You know, it was like, I didn't think I was good enough for it, but he said, yeah, try. All they can do is say is no if they don't like it, and just don't ask for any money. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, contractually, they agreed to take the show, but contractually they had to pay me $1. I signed a contract. I provide them 52 episodes, and they provide me, you know, they pay me $1. It's a legal thing they have to do, right? You know, he stiffed me on that $1. I sent him.
Wow.
I sent the owner of Retro Television probably about 3 or 4 emails saying, "Hey, guys, don't you think we should pony up the $1 by now?" So anyhow, so and at our height we're at like.
Well, we know there's no money in this in filmmaking around here, but that, you know, $1, wow. You know.
Yeah, that's I just thought I could shame him into just sending me $1 bill. I just wanted to frame it. I mean, I'm not that desperate for $1, but so anyhow,
it's the principle of the thing, though. Yeah.
By the time they were done, and I had a great time slot for that. Sunday night at 8:30. You know, originally it was Sunday night at 8, and they actually pushed Doctor Who on Sunday nights an hour further forward to accommodate Captain Isotope. So classic Doctor Who gets pushed to accommodate Captain Isotope. That's about the best it gets, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people got to see the show from there. My favorite part being a guy named Greg Jein, Jein, who, if you read Starlog back in the late 70s and through the early 80s, he was a model maker who worked in Hollywood and worked on all manner of things, and was a really great, talented guy. And he sent me a fan letter, and and he built. He didn't get to build the original movie version of the Enterprise because of kind of an obligation to another project. Otherwise, he would have been doing that. But he did build the Enterprise that appears in the Deep Space Nine episode "Trouble with Tribbles and Tribulations" or something like that.
Yeah,
the one where they time travel back to the classic era. And he sends me a picture of that Enterprise. Says, from the crew of the USS Enterprise to the crew of the USS Isotope, congratulations. And that's I think my highest geek moment there is that. But anyhow, so from there, right around the same time that they were done on Retro showing the show, so they canceled me, and that's, you know, that happens. That's television. It happens. So you don't get upset about it. You just go, well, yeah, I had 3.5 years of primetime television across the country, and I have no track record in the industry. You can't be upset with that. So about a month after that, I get a call from Steve, the guy who owns WBXZ. He says, yeah, I sold the station.
Oh.
What? Yeah, he sold the station. Apparently, the guys who own 5 Hour Energy Drink, and this is leading, by the way, to the thing, who own 5 Hour Energy Drink, got tired of trying to pay for commercials on the Super Bowl because you know, it's like couple $1 million for a 30-second spot. So they said, you know what, we'll just go around the country and buy up every low-power TV station there is, and we'll have our own network. And they started doing that. And one of the ones they got, because they made an offer he couldn't refuse, because low-power TV stations, they're not moneymakers.
Yeah.
So this is basically, I'll take the offer. And I wasn't upset with him. And I've told him repeatedly since then, I'd have done the same thing. But we both realized we missed working on this. Because my wife and I, as part of being on his channel, we help out in some ways with it. But I don't ever want to take the credit for the station. I just want to, but we are, and we're the ones who held over. We never walked away from him after he lost the local TV station. So we're the only ones still working with him on the ROKU channel. So, which is kind of, I told him, I said, I just want to stay your friend. I don't care if there's a TV station or not. I want to be your friend. And
well, that's what everybody does in Western New York. That's why I call it my Western New York filmmaking family. Most of us do things and help each other out. Nobody else knows about it. Nobody gets paid. There's no money anyway, and we're all helping each other because it's tough. It's really very tough to do. And so someone like you who's got something going, you're still helping others in the TV station and everywhere else. That's, how you and I met way back when, doing stuff like that. So I got you.
I was asked to help out on a number of projects over the last 7 years, and I had to turn them down because that would have cost me the time I was working on Captain Isotope. And that's for me, that's my magnum opus in life. When I pass away, the one thing that's going to continue on after me that I know is going to stay there is Captain Isotope. Yeah. Anything else I do, gravy, but Captain Isotope is where my name is on this planet. That's my footprint. But anyhow, Steve and I talked about different ways to bring the station back. And there was an attempt to bring it to another low-power TV station that was looking for somebody who could provide local programming content. And that was going really well up until literally the day we were supposed to go live. And everything fell apart there. Okay, fine, that happens. You sort of take a couple weeks off and then you regroup. And when we came back, Steve said, we're going on Roku. He found a way to do it without it costing. And he had about 80% of his elements left from the original station. So he was able to just keep this station going, but on Roku instead of. And he found the proper venue. And there were, like with anything else, low power or low budget, there's little pitches along the way. But right now we're running very smoothly. And the channel plays exactly as if it were on television. And it's just instead of, and this is one of the few advantages, because when it was on television, he relied on a lot of public service announcements. So Saturday morning cartoons are not cut up with periodic breaks to see somebody have a stroke. Thank you. I'm never going to miss those stroke commercials, and there were a lot of them. But now he airs old television commercials from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it gives it a lot of flavor. He's very smart. He keeps it exactly as if it were a TV station, and we watch it. It's on in our house almost all the time. Even if we don't care to watch what's on, it makes great background sound because older television had better sound. Newer television has more technically adept sound, but it's not as
analog versus digital, basically. Yeah,
that's just part of it. My wife and I have had many, many long conversations over dissecting I Love Lucy's, for example. It's a is a huge fan of that series. And it occurred to me that the thing that not too many people really get about I Love Lucy is the sound design. There are no really harsh sounds on I Love Lucy. Everything is within a range that's much more pleasing to listen to, so that when there is the occasional wah or whatever, it stands out and it's more comedic. And if you look at other sitcoms at the time, I Married Joan and so forth, they did not have that. They were less. They were more about just getting the joke out or whatever, but the sound design was usually not as good. Lucy was great sound design. I suck at sound design. I can't. That's that, especially in the first season and the early in the second season. My sound is terrible. If I could fix any one thing, I would go back and redo all of that. But I don't have the technical capacity. But
sound is difficult anyway. I mean, it really is difficult if you wanted to go. I used to be in the room with Glenn Sound. They would be recording Buffalo Philharmonic. That is probably the most difficult kind of sound recording you can do.
Yeah, but they at least had a budget for that then. You know,
they had a budget, but even so, I'm just trying to say that it's a very, very difficult thing to get it. In our case, sound is not as complicated as that. But even so, like you say, technical skills, sound is still difficult. You rely on what you got, equipment-wise, and then editing. There isn't a whole hell of a lot unless you have a budget. And then you need to know how to use the equipment.
The second half of the series has so much better sound. So yeah, we're now on Roku, and it's a throwback can be found on a streaming channel called Stream On a Budget, which is actually, if you search for it, you just search for Stream On. It's free, and it's this guy is hosting TV stations and things like that from all over. We're one of the featured stations because within a couple months we jumped way up into being in the top 10 of viewed stations on Stream On a Budget. Wow. Because the station is. Especially on Saturdays, Sci-Fi Saturdays, is just a knockout schedule. Ultraman and UFO, the old series. You remember UFO from the 70s? Creature features, just all sorts of stuff. And we created a show for midnight on Saturday. He was throwing away his late night schedule. And first thing I did was we moved Mansion of Mystery repeats, because there's over 100 episodes now. Our weeknights at 11:30, so you have something to watch later in the evening. Captain Isotope, which is at 78 episodes right now, and we got one more episode to shoot. Is weeknights at 11, and then both shows are spotlighted on Saturday during the evening. There's another horror host on Saturday night at 10, which is Mr. Lobo's Cinema Insomnia, which is really fun most of the time. And then at midnight, he was just repeating his schedule. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Midnight on a Saturday? That's a remote time. And he said, well, what'd you put in there? And so I thought about it, and I came up with a show called Super Secret Midnight Monster Show. And the original iteration was I was taking these obscure early 80s anime movies that you forgot even existed. And I created this opening segment. Murdered by Robots did probably the best piece of music he's ever going to do was for the Super Secret Midnight Monster Show. And that opens that up, and it's just like I can be dead tired at 11:55, but at 12 o'clock midnight Saturday night, I'm air guitaring along with that. It's just it wakes you up. It's fun. The current iteration of the show is the first half hour is Japanese Spider-Man, and the second half hour is Gundam, Zeta Gundam, from the which, believe it or not, is public domain. I could not find it. The only way that I find Zeta Gundam copyright protected in the United States is in movie format. but when they made it originally and dubbed it for the U.S., they just never re-upped the copyright, and it was at a time where right now there is no copyright holder for it.
Wow.
So we've got a killer hour at midnight every Saturday night, and it's wrapped around with this opening where I've got tentacles flopping around in front of a TV screen on a spaceship, and it shows clips of whatever the next show is going to be. And Murdered by Robots, amazing score, and it's like that. I think I'm more proud of that at the moment than I am Captain Isotope, just because I've been living with Isotope for so long. But how to get part of it, how to be a part of all of this, which I think is really at the core what you wanted to know, is work up your idea, do a pilot, figure out how to do the number of episodes that would make it worth it for a TV station to run, and then talk to Steve and see if it's something that he wants to do and if something he can provide. He's very open to wanting to push local talent. He wants to do that, but for instance, he can't show the outlaw films because, well, the FCC would have a heart attack. He can't. A lot of other people. I know Greg Lamberson, for instance, would some of his stuff would work really well there, but he's working on a professional level where his stuff is owned by other people. He can't just say, "Here, put this on there." So, it's up to people like you and I getting out there and making our shows and coming up with something that we think people will want to see, and being able to see it through, and to put up with being the guy that has to be the bad guy and say no to people, or tell them to stop being jerks, or to just put the hammer down when it needs to come down. But it's not undoable.
It's difficult to be a boss in that respect, you know what I mean? But you got to do that for the sake of the show. And they can always be another part or have another capacity in what you're doing.
Yeah. Fellow that I used to work with who's in a band, I've done a couple music videos for him, including we did an animated one, AI animation, but still. He wants very much to put together a weekly show of spotlighting local bands. Problem with that is we don't know how to get around the copyright thing because a lot of local bands do covers. So, it's got to be all original stuff. But he'd like to go in and, the problem is he's turning to me and says, "Oh, can you go and film these?" And I'm like, no, I can't. First off, I absolutely hate live music in a bar. I hate it. I loathe it. It's like the last place you'll find me. And it's not that I don't like music. I just hate that sounding. That sounding. I don't go to bars anyhow as a rule. I am a blatantly unfun person. But if he can find someone to do that with him, yeah, I'm sure he could get picked up if he could work out those details and have a framing structure to interview people and so forth. I can't take on everything else that everyone needs me to do. So I just wish other people would say, "Hey, here's an opportunity to get seen and to do something." Right now, I say this not as not in any arrogance, but I'm pretty certain the most successful local filmmaker we've had, because I've been on television for 7 years making original content, scripted dialogue, shot with special effects, shot with telling storylines with characters evolving over the course of time, and it's been shown on national television. It's been shown locally nonstop up until the station got sold, but it's back and it's now on Roku, and I know that I'm being seen in countries all around the world. So I'm not making a cent off of any of it.
No, you have a measure of success demonstrated. Yeah,
I don't make the money that I can walk into big McDonald's and buy a Big Mac. And it's not because they're more expensive now too. It's not a moneymaker for me, and I like that. I do. I've actually had a few people that I was trying to get involved in the show walk away from me because, well, you're not trying to monetize it. I'm like, yeah, but as soon as you bring money into it, you'll find out there's so many things you can't do, and so many things that are harder to do. If you do this with the idea, don't even think about making any money off of it. Just do what you can do and do the best you can do. You'll have fun. You will have emotional satisfaction. You will make friends and really meet awesome people, and you'll learn from them. And you will evolve yourself over the course of it. I'm a much better person. I'm a much better person now than I was. Well, it's not even following your passion. Me as a person, I'm a much better person than I was when I was 50, when I turned 50, because of all of this stuff. I had to relearn humility, but not sacrifice who I am or anything. But I realized I was too arrogant when I was 50. I had actually kind of pushed away a lot of people, because if you'd known me when I was in my late 40s, you would have probably said, "Oh, Reboy, okay." But just getting to work with everybody and be creative and find out that somebody actually will listen if you say, "Hey, I'll put it down on paper," and you bring it to life as best you can. And if there's something you don't like, you have a say in it. You can say, "I don't like this direction." That's happened. There were things that I wanted to do I never got to do. Catfighting Women of the Moon is an episode I always wanted to do, and it just never happened because it needed to film like on a beach, and I needed 4 or 5 girls in bikinis in a pillow fight.
Yeah. Well, that working together, those bonds that you make. You talk about humility. Everybody learns. Life makes you learn certain lessons, whether you want to or not. Some we already know. Some, it's part of our character, our personality. Some we need to be refined. Everybody, myself included, and we all go through that. People can help you, but I think when you're happy pursuing the thing that you like to do, or if you love to do it, a passion makes it better. Money and power go together, and if it's somebody else's money, they have the power to make your show into what they want it to be. So I guess from that point of view, I understand exactly what you're saying there. But I know the passion part, and you do have a measure of success. So there's no real arrogance there, I would say. It's just, hey, sometimes we like to let people know that if this works, you can do it too. Follow in those footsteps. So the market is changing.
Literally, if I can do it, it's doable. You just have to do the legwork, and you have to know what you're getting in for, and you have to be willing to fail. Because without that,
you had mentioned some of the things that you did that you didn't like. Your first episode, darkness, and so forth. That's how you learn. You make it better. Oops, I don't want to do that again. I know why I don't like it. So that's reason enough, right? And sometimes you find out. Sometimes you learn through other people's success and works. But I mean, yeah, it's okay.
If you ask any long-running horror host about their first season of their shows, they don't even want to release them on video, because the first seasons are I had to convince Penny Dreadful, who's this really amazing lady out in New England. She's not doing it really anymore, but I had to convince her that my wife really wanted to get this episode from her first season. And she says, "They're terrible." I says, "We know they're going to be terrible, but we want to see it because we love watching what you do." And I go back, I look at the first 10 episodes of Captain Isotope, and there's tons of mistakes in there. There's also things in there that innovation and other things forced into creating some really amazing things that I'm extremely proud of to this day. I find it very interesting. The first 3 episodes, our proto Captain Isotope. They're shaking out what didn't work from what was done in the first episode, and then the fourth episode is the first fully formed "This is Captain Isotope" episode, and I love the fourth episode, which is the one where they come across this this non-corporeal race that takes over their Daphne's mind, the Princess of Space, takes over her mind, to try to kill the crew. It's a great episode where it's serious when it needs to be serious, funny when it needs to be funny, and the comedy is at a certain level that I really like, and I find that is a hard thing to get early on.
Well, but as you do it, you learn how it is that you made what you like, and everybody's different, but you know, the thing that makes you you, and the work that you make, you know, you put your stamp on it, so to speak, is the stuff that you like to show. The things you want to never show, you know, or avoid, cut out. So it's you build on what you do, you get better at it, and it's a way even for you as a creator to explore. So those are all good things, I think. You know, it's all good.
And I will tell you, necessity comes up with some amazing solutions. There's an episode called "The Fourfold Man," where we shot most of it out in the woods, and there's a scene where Sarah Jean, is a local actress, she's playing another a spaceship captain who's stranded on a planet, and she's been there for a while, and Captain Isotope has been dispatched to rescue her. Problem is, for some reason, robot Captain Isotopes have been trying to kill her for a couple of weeks now. So when he shows up, she doesn't know he's not a robot. So there's a scene where he thinks he's finally convincing her that that he's okay, and that she's safe with him, and she's lowers her gun, and she moves in towards him, and he goes, "It's okay, I'll take care of you." And then she very calmly and quietly raises her hand up, and he's got his arms on holding her shoulders, and he raises her gun up, which we used laser tag guns from 1986. I love those guns. Anyhow, she pulls the trigger, point blank, blast in the chest. It was a great shot. Until I got home, and I'm looking at the editing, and I'm like, oh my God, the gun is hidden behind his arm. How am I going to put a laser blast in there? And I figured it out. Because by that point, I was starting to really kind of grok what you could and couldn't do with green screen. And even though this wasn't green screen, it was very much a similar concept. And I figured out that I could, because it's a very quick thing, I could do a screen grab of that exact second, in Photoshop, cut out everything but that arm, and then put the arm overlay to that. But between that and the rest of the shot, I had a flash. So it's like this arm is a post addition taken directly from this shot. So it's like you screen grab this, cut everything else out, and then overlay this over the video, and then I have a flash. So, and it works really well. You watch it, you won't even notice that there's an effect there other than the gun blast. So little things like that, I'm just really proud of. That I came up with those solutions. I didn't go to the internet and figure out, well, how would you do this? I just said, okay, we'll have to work with, well, let's see, I can do this, I can do that. Hey, that'll work.
Your experience is growing. It enables you to do stuff like that.
Yeah. So
that's fun.
So yeah, a lot of fun things that I was able to learn to do, and a lot of things that I was very happy that came out of it. I don't know if I'm taking too much time, because I could literally talk for another half hour if you wanted.
You're encouraging people, and that's what I like to do, encourage folks. I know some that, they have no money. They have talent, but they have no money. And sometimes that puts them down, and they think that, You've been there. You know how that is. I can't do anything. Where am I going to go from here? Look at you and me. We've known each other now for a long time. And I think the last time I saw you in person was at Mike Gessel's house with Ace and everybody after one of his crew and cast screenings of one of the films, Outlaw, and so on. So, but here we are. Look at us, and we're discussing some of these things, your successes, and so others can do that too. Like you said, if you did it, voila.
It might help if I explain it this way for people. Here's my budget right now for, we've got this last episode to shoot, and I had to put it off for a while because Cheryl Simchak is out of town for a long time. So now she's back. We're going to be able to shoot this last episode, the series finale, which is episode 79. We could stop at 78 because that's actually 3 26 episodes seasons, but classic Star Trek was 79 episodes for some reason. So to me, that's the touchstone. I had hit 79, and I don't count the Christmas special either. So that's outside of that. So anyhow, my average, the budget I'm going to spend now, I spend $125 a month for studio rental space, which I also use for photography. But that's kind of dried up. But so now the studio, that's $125. My costumes, Janice made them years ago. We're all set. The props, the gun, if I don't go somewhere special or whatever, everything's already there. There is no cost outside of the rent. There's no cost for I don't have to buy film. I don't have to buy, I don't have to pay for anything to be processed after it's done. The way I have my special effects right now, I go home and I work with pictures of the ship, and I just move the pictures around as I need to. That's my special effects process. So it's an animatic that's kind of slightly more advanced. It works very well for what I do. So if you do it right and you plan it so that you don't have to expend a lot of money, you can really get a lot out of creativity and imagination. And and don't rely on what can I buy. Rely on how can I make something happen. How can I put people in an environment? I mean, right now, I can green screen many, many things. I try not to wow people with the green screen, though, as I said earlier. But I need in the second last episode, Coin of the Realm, I needed a whole new spaceship interior for 2 space princesses, and so I come up with this background, and it just has to work. It has to be believable as a spaceship. So I just wholesale go into Photoshop, make the elements, leave cutouts so I can see stars moving in the background. But I don't have to spend any money to do that. Once I have all those elements in place, that's what makes it work. So if you're looking for something like this, you'll have upfront costs getting everything in place. You got to buy the base costume stuff for a science fiction show. But once you have those, you just got rent every month, and So my budget right now is $125 a month or per episode.
Well, right, like you said, you already invested. If it's Adobe, do you have the whole suite, or are you just buying once a year the license to use the product?
I don't use Adobe. I use Photoshop, but that I use a free version. They put out a version, CS2. They said for a limited time, they said, you can download this and just don't update it, and it will work fine forever. And it was a legal thing to do. For editing suite, I was using CapCut for a while, but they decided to make it a paid thing. Now there's a cheat to continue to use it without having to pay for it. You just have to know how to go back to an earlier version and then never upgrade. But CapCut was pretty good. But my primary is Power Director. And that does almost everything extremely well except for chroma key. Chroma key, it bites at. It's terrible. But you can get every other thing you need out of Power Director. So for chroma key, my favorite program is still with Filmora's Wondershare's Filmora editing suite, which is pain in the ass for a lot of other stuff, but does amazingly good chroma key. So those are the softwares that I use.
That's cool. And obviously the cameras and the website, you're a photographer, you already have some of that for what you've been doing with photography. And so very good, Joe. Well, listen, we have to do another one of these. I'd like to, maybe I could come even to your studio and watch you film episode 79 just to see how you guys are doing that. And we can come back and talk about that on another episode of Illuminations. Does that sound like something you could do?
It's possible. It depends on when we do it. Because I'm not sure yet when I'm filming, so it's a matter of people's availability.
Yes, scheduling is tough. I know.
I mean, I wrote the script for this last episode in July, and I'm still trying to get it scheduled. So, if I can work it out, sure.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I hope you got that. A lot of information here, and
I hope that was interesting.
I say it is. This is for the filmmakers, our filmmaking family, really. And I know there are a lot of people who want to do this and don't know where. They don't have an example necessarily, or maybe they just haven't met anyone who succeeded like you have. So this will be an inspiration for them. It will be an encouragement to them, and very interesting indeed. So yeah, interesting.
Well, much like this guy in a TV studio back in the 1950s making this little thing about a guy who can, watches time and makes sure it unfolds properly, who never thought his show was going to go on. I really hope someday somebody sees Captain Isotope and says, I could do something like that.
Yeah.
Got to make it mine, find out how to do it. And, that's kind of my goal is years from now, I'm dead, I'm gone, I'm buried. Somebody sees the show and is inspired by it. And then I'll have done my job properly if that happens. And I'll never know.
Well, you never know. You really never do know. The way I see things, I believe the rapture of the church is coming. And, even if you're dead, your body is dead, but you're not dead. You can see from above through the power of the Holy Spirit. So you'll know. Maybe nobody else down here will know that but you'll be able to see it from up there. And unless, of course, the rapture comes and, things will be different. So, God bless you, Joe, and thank you very much for sharing your time with me. We're going to do another one of these. And
all right.
When you've got your scheduling together, please do let me know. I'd like to come and see how you're doing it. That'd be fun.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All the best.